What's your favorite scary movie?
Fear is defined as a feeling of agitation caused by the presence or imminence of danger.
You're still alive.
Why do you think people believe in ghosts?
They're here.
For fun?
Most people are so unbelievable.
I'm so sorry.
To be alone
What do you want, puppy?
without you. Not anymore.
Last fire will rise behind those eyes. Black house will rock.
I see dead people. There is a presence in the house with you.
We can't hurt you if you don't believe. I suggest you leave that house
Do it, Gordon.
before you do. It's not even real, okay?
It's just a girl.
What is that? What the hell is that?
I'm scared, Mom.
Scared of what?
Them.
I saw something in her.
Temptation, hate beats like a drum deep in your veins.
I should have given you to God when you were born.
Let me give you a little inside information about God. God likes to watch.
You think she's possessed?
He's a sadist!
I've seen some horrible things. Nothing that can't be explained by human nature.
Then you haven't seen through evil.
You're all going to die tonight.
Tried to make you immortal.
You tried to make me a killer!
What are you?
I'm flesh and blood, but not human. I haven't been human for 200 years.
You never grow old, Michael. You never die. But you must feed.
The full moon can make people go mad, like crazy.
Before dawn.
I can't be like this.
Sometimes
I'm dying.
that is better.
The Home Office has issued a statement urging people to stay in their homes and await further instruction.
When no one official is prepared to comment, religious groups are calling it Judgment Day.
It was a virus, an infection.
I remember everything. If you want to help your family, let's figure out how we stop this.
He's infected.
Attackers can be stopped by removing the head or destroying the brain. I will repeat that by removing the head or destroying the brain.
You tried to make me a killer!
I want to play a game.
Whether by night or whether by gun, losing your life can sometimes be fun.
Let the killing commence!
Here's Johnny!
Why are you scared?
Shh, darling. It's for the best.
What the fuck are you doing to us? People like us don't survive tonight.
Here's some time for a grand finale.
I'll help you catch him, Gary.
Where are you gonna go?
We traced the call. It's coming from inside the house.
Where are you gonna run? Don't go out there, please. Where are you gonna hide?
Now, wherever you
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Conscious Mind. I'm your host, Anthony Agati, along with my newly made over, recently moved into a haunted house, I believe, as you can see on the screen there, Miss Nina Manfrey.
Hey everyone, how are ya?
So you got your hair did, you got the bling bling. How do you like
I love it. I love it. It's great. I love all the details. It's cool.
You got your scrapbooking books there. You feel comfortable, don't you?
I am right at home.
Well, speaking of new, we have a new show for you guys tonight. How many of you have heard of the urban legend Black-Eyed Children, or Black-Eyed Kids as they're pretty much well known for? Yes, maybe not. Well, don't worry. Nina and I will try and cover all there is to know about these creepy phenomenon kids. Hopefully, we'll give you more insight into what they are, or simply just introduce you to this topic if you have not heard of it before. But before we get into it, I just want to remind everybody that you can catch us right here on Facebook Live every Saturday night at 10 p.m. at The Conscious Mind. If you have a show idea, just like us on Facebook and send us a message. You know, the show is for you, and so we want to know what you want to hear more about. Also, make sure you comment below during the show with questions or thoughts or anything that you want to share. We'll answer them as we go along during the show. Okay, so I'm talking quickly tonight. I don't know why. Okay, so the topic tonight is Black-Eyed Children. Nina, I've done a couple of shows in years past on this topic, and I've talked to one gentleman in particular, David Weatherly, a couple of years ago, who wrote a book about it and subsequently has done talks and conventions and conferences around the country in regards to what he calls strange intruders, or black-eyed kids. And I have gone down the road on several different branches in regards to the black-eyed kids. And, I've even talked up how it could be possibly indigo children, which we may or may not get into. But what have you uncovered? Well, first, let me just ask you this. I think I know what the answer is, but did you ever hear of black-eyed children before we talked about doing this for the show?
That's a negative. I did not know anything about black-eyed children.
So when you started to do some research and look online, what did you initially find? What was some of the things that you came across?
I gotta say, a majority of the things that I came across were people saying it's a hoax. It started in the late 1990s. What's that guy's name? Brian something or other.
Brian Bethel.
Yes, he was the one that wrote an article about his interaction with the black-eyed children, and from that moment on, apparently interest, how hysteria is. So one person saw it, tomorrow somebody else saw it, 15 other people saw it. So that's the way it sort of looks like to me. I did read a lot of, and YouTube a lot of people that do believe that they do exist. But my major thing is, if they're black-eyed children, why are they not black-eyed adults?
Well, there have been accounts of black-eyed adults, not so prevalent as black-eyed kids. But I think before we get into the debate, I see you're trying to just get right into it and start a fight. But before we get into that portion of it, whether or not it's a hoax or if it is real and real experiences or real encounters, what were some of the things that you came across as far as what they were? I mean,
well,
go ahead.
I read that they could be anything from vampires to demonic spirit to people with this disease that enlarges their pupils or something or other. I mean, I've read a bunch of stuff. I mean, do I believe it? No, but whatever. That's not here or there right now. But
right away, you had to get in there and say what you believe.
I know, you know me. So
well, the concept basically is that, or that the phenomenon is that there are these children, these kids. Typically, they are maybe 13 and under, or somewhere between 9 and 13 or 9 and 14, somewhere around that age. And the stories go that typically they find you in your home or they find you in an enclosed location, because I've read some stories where these kids came up to someone who was in their car. And so they come up to you in an enclosed environment like your home or car and ask to be invited. They'll ring your bell or knock on your door or whatever, or approach you and ask to be invited in. And the first thing that you notice about these children, hence the name Black-Eyed Children, that they have black eyes. There's no iris. There's none of the whites in your eye at all. It's just complete black, almost like an alien eye. And
I don't want to interrupt you, but a lot of the things that I read say that that's not the first thing that they notice is their black eyes. That they notice that there's tremendous fear that comes over them.
Right.
And then they notice like that their clothing is a little weird and they speak a little off. And then all of a sudden the black eye thing hits them.
Right. And I've heard other stories about children with weird deformed feet. They've got enlarged feet, or just there are other things, just oddly off about them. And there's this strange aura that comes from them that you feel, or that sort of, encompasses you. But the main thing basically is the reason why they're being called black-eyed children is because of their eyes. And what they do is they try and insist on coming in. They insist on you inviting them in. And coupled with the fear and the way that these kids look, most of the time, many of these quote-unquote victims or experiences, they don't invite any of these kids in and are frightened, and they tend to go off. But then again, if the story goes and the urban legend is correct, there wouldn't be any stories that come forward where people would have invited these kids in, because apparently what is supposed to happen is these kids kill whoever it is that they are trying to meet with or get in contact with. But that's the gist of what these black-eyed kids are. And you are correct. They did form, or the stories started to come about in the early to mid 90s, and mainly basically online. Now, Nina, were you big in the 90s when the internet first came out and going online and venturing off into that abyss of the World Wide Web?
Yeah, a little bit, I guess.
Whoa, your mic went a little crazy right there. It sounded like an alien almost.
Oh, did it?
Yeah. So you said what? A little bit?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it wasn't obsessed, but yes, I was definitely all about it.
Well, you may know now, or I don't know if you knew back then, but there are a lot of, obviously the internet was new. It was something that people were experimenting basically at the time. People were creating groups and forums to communicate with others. That was to me, that was the hype of the internet, was to be able to communicate with other people over water, over oceans and continents, and different people from around the world, to be able to talk and communicate with them and share liked interests. I know that was the sort of big thing in the very beginning, was this whole idea that you can actually do this now. And so in the very early stages of the internet, or in this sort of increasingly fascination towards the World Wide Web, people were creating sort of these groups, and a lot of them, were the kids who normally didn't have any friends of their own. They would make friends online with others who would then create this world, like a different world, and they would create these forums where you can go on and create things, create monsters, create creatures, and it was a game that many of these groups did. I forgot what it's called. It's not like Dungeons and Dragons, but it's similar to that aspect. And they would create, warlocks and witches and whatever, but then they would also create creatures. And it was. I remember there was one portion of it where they would call it quote quarantined, and they would create these cells, like jail cells, and say that this creature, with all of its descriptions and characteristics and everything, is in cell number 114578. And to release him, you need to do this and that or whatever. It was all these games. And apparently, a lot of the phenomenon that we hear about today, and this is what I believe, a lot of these types of phenomenon, like the Slender Man and the Black-Eyed Children, came from these types of forums because, as a matter of fact, the Slender Man came from someone who created this monster, but then, and I'll get into this a little bit later, then other people who were not a part of this started to, quote-unquote, see the Slender Man in the woods or in their home. And so what I believe is that because this came out in the 90s and in the sort of early stages of the internet, and these groups of people all over the world that would create these games with these creatures and monsters, put it into the minds of the people that these things existed. And for some reason, these quote-unquote black-eyed children sort of ballooned up. It was hyped up to the point where many people had heard about it, and then once off the internet, people would talk about it with friends, and you would overhear people talking about it, and thus the craze created by this black-eyed children. But you had mentioned, Nina, the name Brian Bethel in the very beginning. Do you know anything about him and the reason why his name is pretty much synonymous with the black-eyed children?
I didn't really do much research on him. I just knew that he was the first person really to quote unquote put it out there.
Right. He was an online journalist, and he apparently had this story or this experience with black-eyed children, and he wrote about it. He blogged about it online, and thus became this black-eyed children phenomenon. But, and you know what, before we go any further, Nina, I'm going to try and see if I can do this, if this is going to work. I actually have a couple of sound bites that I wanted to play for people who are watching now. This one, I went to the blackeyedchildrenreports.com website, and it is it's a small website. It really doesn't have much information on it. And if they do, it is pretty old. There's nothing recent, maybe within the last 6 years. But there's an interview that they did with Brian Bethel. And he talks about the story about how this all happened and his personal experience. So I figured instead of talking about it, maybe we can just let him, you can hear his voice and have him talk about it for himself. Do you mind if I do that, Nina?
No, it sounds great.
Okay, so hopefully this is going to work. This is from, like I mentioned, blackeyedchildrenreports.com, and this was done interviewed by Vonda McDaniel on the Haunted Harvest Moon. I guess it's a podcast or a radio show, I'm not sure. But here is the interview with Brian talking about his first encounter or his experience of these black-eyed children.
So, Brian, we're going to start off with you. You're a journalist, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I've been a newspaper reporter now for close to 20 years.
Okay, wonderful. So prior to your encounter, had you ever heard of the black-eyed children?
Not at all. I mean, this is, I grew up reading a fair amount about ghost stories and whatnot. It was just sort of a hobby or interest of mine, and this is something that I had never come across in any way until it actually happened to me. So no, not in any. This is nothing it's nothing I'd ever heard of.
So tell us a little bit, start at the beginning and tell us about your encounter.
Sure, and I'll apologize. I've been a little under the weather, but so if I'm a little hoarse, forgive me. But so yeah, gosh, this was a long time ago now, relatively, around 1996, 97. Someday I need to actually go back through the archives and see when this movie was actually playing, so I get 100% when it was. But I had not been at the newspaper for very long, and this was sort of in the early days of the internet, so we didn't have broadband in any capacity. You just had dial-up internet, and there were only 2 internet providers in town at the time that offered anything. So I had sort of picked one and was actually stopping by where their offices originally were to pay a bill. And this happens to be right next to an old movie theater. And I actually have some fairly happy memories about that place. I saw Empire Strikes Back there when I was a kid with my grandfather. So, I mean, it wasn't anything that I associated with anything creepy or weird. But they had a night drop slot, and so I was going to just use the theater marquee light to write out a check, pay my bill, and leave. And that's where this sort of starts. I'm doing that. I hear a knock at the window, and I look over, and there are two young boys standing there. I put them somewhere between the ages of maybe 10 to 13. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes with boys and whatnot. And the first thing that I thought was they're going to hit me up for money, but I sort of rolled down my window a crack and said, "Can I help you?" And I suppose I should describe them. The first one, the only one who did any speaking whatsoever, was sort of an olive-complected guy with curly hair, and I've sort of, in retellings of this story, dubbed him the spokesman because he was the only one who ever spoke or said anything whatsoever. The other guy was sort of in the back, pale skin, freckles, red hair, and he never spoke a word the entire time this all went on. Both of them were wearing sort of pullover hoodies, just, again, the kind that kids do. And so the spokesman tells me, "Mister, we've left our money at home, and we need to go to our mom's house and pick up our money because we want to see the movie," which, I mean, sounds like a perfectly, in a lot of respects, logical and plausible thing that could happen.
Right.
But I'm just immediately terrified of these kids. For some reason I don't understand. It just comes over me just immediately. There is some strange primal fear that just erupts, and I don't understand it. There is no logical explanation for it, but it begins at that moment and just starts to intensify all throughout this story. So anyway, we carry on a bit of conversation and whatnot. Again, the kid in the back never says anything, but I noticed that the spokesman, who I took to be a little bit older, is very smooth in his presentation. I mean, he's not like children that I've interviewed, and I'm sure other people have, especially when they approach a stranger, there's always a little bit of trepidation and whatnot. But this guy was just as smooth as silk. And he just started saying, "Now look, mister, come on, it's not far away, it won't take long, we won't take up much of your time, you don't need to worry about us. It's not like we have a gun or anything." I mean, which I thought was a real weird thing for a kid to say. I mean, but throughout this entire experience, this level of fear is just growing and growing and growing. And eventually I'm just in a complete and total panic, and I can't explain why, because to me, they're just a couple of little kids, or younger boys that have just knocked on my window. Right. So finally, I asked them, "Well, what movie are you planning to see?" And they say, "Well, we're going to go see Mortal Kombat," which sort of places it in time, I guess. So I look up at the theater marquee, and I see that the last showing of Mortal Kombat is, by the time I take these kids home and bring them back, the movie will practically be over. And so I look over and I start to mention this to them, and this is where it just turns absolutely bizarre, because, and I don't know I've struggled with this. People ask me what do I think happened here. I'm not entirely sure. If it was just the act of looking away and then looking back at them again, breaking their gaze or whatever. If I just finally noticed what was causing my brain to scream in terror, I don't know. But when I looked over, both of these kids have solid black eyes. And I just absolutely lose it at that moment. I know that I have to get away from these kids. There is this absolutely predatory air, especially about the first one, and I just know that I need to get away right then and there. And at some point in this, I should mention that I noticed that my hand had kind of sort of strayed toward the door latch and whatnot, and I remember kind of moving it away as if that's something that I remember in retrospect, just kind of being. I don't remember putting my hand there like I was going to open the door, but anyway, long story short, I start making any excuse to get away from these kids. I'm sorry. I just remembered something. I can't help you. I apologize. And at this point, the spokesman becomes absolutely furious and begins just banging on the car window.
Oh, wow.
And just absolutely starts screaming at me. And the one thing that really sticks out in my mind that he said, and this is completely crazy on the surface, but at the time, I mean, anything seemed possible. He said, "Mister, we can't come inside your car unless you tell us it's okay.
Oh, wow.
Let us in."
Wow. Like,
so
they have to have
there.
Permission, but they're kind of demanding too.
Yeah. And so anyway, I got out of there. I just put the car in reverse, pulled out of the parking lot, looked back in my rearview mirror, and they were gone. And with the parking lot the way it's designed, and with the angle that I could and should be able to see, there was no place that they could have run that quickly. They were just gone. And I hightailed it home, literally ran from my car to the front door, locked myself inside,
I think I
gave
would
myself
too.
a few moments to still the panic, and called a friend of mine who I told the story to, and then I recounted all of this a little later in an internet post, which is sort of why we're talking today, I guess.
So, I have some comments, Nina, about this interview or his story, but I wanted to get your initial reaction to it.
Well, it sounds like a fairy. It's like a scary tale that somebody's telling. It's very, it's precise. It's this. It's not. And when he talks about it, he doesn't sound like he's got any emotion in his story. Like, if that happened to me, I'd be scared, and I would tell it as I was still in that moment.
Well, even though, I mean, the incident happened in 1998, and here he is, I think it's maybe 2013 maybe, or 2011. I don't know when this interview was. But it was within the last 5-6 years. Still, you'd still have that emotion with you?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. That's a creepy thing that just happened. Don't you think that's creepy as all hell? And then they're banging. Even if it was just a regular street thug, when you're telling a story like that, you're emotionally invested in that.
Yeah, the one thing that I had a problem with, and I'm not, making a judgment on whether or not he's telling the truth. What I'm picking out are some of the things that just, put a big question mark over the story that he's telling. Is for a good portion of the conversation that he was having with these kids while he was sitting in the car, he did not notice the eyes. And to me, if you're having a conversation with kids, now these kids would have come up directly up to probably the height of his head while he was sitting down in the car. You know, they didn't have to hunch over. They weren't a tall adult or anything like that. If he's saying they were 10 or 13 years old, they would have come directly up to his window, up to his height, his head height. So he should have been able to see their face if he's having this conversation. And what bothers me is that he didn't notice the eyes until maybe 2/3 of the way through the conversation. And then that's when he sort of was even in more fear and just decided to get the hell out of there afterwards. That to me just doesn't sit right.
But that's the way, you know, when I was reading all this stuff online, that's the way a lot of the people have their accounts of what happened to them, that they say they don't notice that right away. I don't know how you don't notice that right away.
Right.
I don't know if it's because of the fear that's in them, they don't notice it right away, or whatever they want to call it, but that'd certainly be the first thing I would notice. I mean that they're looking at you, they're directly talking to you, these little people. If you're in a car or if you open a door, you're going to see them.
I mean, when you have a conversation with someone, do you normally look at them in their eyes, or do you, like sometimes I catch myself, I'll watch like their nose and their mouth. I'm not necessarily looking at their eyes.
Well, no, I look into somebody's eyes when I talk to them.
Do you always look at somebody's eyes, not their mouth?
You know what? I don't know. I'm going to test the theory out of work then, I guess.
Ask people at work if when they talk and have a conversation, do they really look in their eyes? I have a hard time. You know, I can glance over and look at someone's eyes while I'm having a conversation, but I don't stare. I don't, you know, it's not where I'm fixated on. For some reason, I look at the mouth because, not that I'm reading their lips, but to me, that's where the voice is coming from. That's where the communication is coming from. That's for me.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to think on that now. I'm pretty sure I look in their eyes.
But in any case, it just, again, I'm not placing judgment on his story. I just have a hard time understanding how can you have a conversation for that long with kids who are directly in front of you. It's, you know, not that you're at a doorway and you're looking down at them, or you are face to face with these kids and you don't notice their eyes. I understand it was at nighttime. Maybe it was dark out and you may not have noticed it or whatever. But that I have a sort of problem with trying to understand or trying to pinpoint my belief in the story itself. I'm getting feedback, Nina. Do you have anything playing or?
Nope, I have nothing.
No, I know. I don't hear anything on your end, but for some reason, sometimes I hear some feedback, which is weird. All right. Anyway, so obviously you don't believe this story.
No, it's ridiculous.
Anything about the way that he told the story, or maybe even his? I mean, he is a writer. He's a journalist. He works for the newspaper.
Yes, he's a storyteller.
Right.
And that's what he told, a horror, a Halloween time story.
Right. And many people have said that he may have done this to get his name out there so that he can get more work.
Oh, I totally agree with that.
I think also too, because it sort of goes back to what I said earlier. His story comes out in 1998. In the early 90s, when or early to mid 90s, maybe it was 95-ish, let's just say, when the internet was really just starting, you know, truly really just getting started, or getting its hype. That is when these groups that I was talking about earlier were creating these games online, these groups and these forums for creatures and monsters, and this game that was being played. And there's a thing called, hold on a second, let me see if I can try and pull it up. There's a thing called priming. Did you ever hear of that phrase, Nina?
Oh, yeah, I read that in my research. Look at that.
Wow. Do you remember, though, what it is?
How fancy are you? Hold on, it's in my notes.
You have notes, too. I'm so proud of you.
I felt that this deserved my undivided attention.
Wow. We are stepping up our game.
Priming is where the pre-suggestion has already been placed into the mind.
Correct. So if you have a group of people who are just talking about one thing and talking about an experience and with such enthusiasm and energy and, it's just this gusto of whatever it is that topic is, it's now implanted in your brain. It is playing a sort of mini movie in your mind. You may subconsciously not even realize it or consciously realize that it's happening, but it is still replaying in your mind that conversation. And so when you go out somewhere and you walk around, you may interpret something that you are not familiar with, that you may not be able to see clearly, as that thing, as that whatever that topic was that you were talking about, because it is within your mind. That's what priming is. And so going back to what I just said, this whole idea of this early online gaming forum thing with creatures and dungeons and all this other stuff, it may have created that priming for people, and it may have been inset into people's minds. Now, again, Brian was a journalist, so I'm sure he may have done a lot of work online, and he may have come across stories like this that he may have read at one point, or maybe it was, maybe it was a video that was playing in the background while he was doing work and not even realizing it, implanting this story into his brain, and then one night just, having this confrontation with kids, what he thinks may have been black eyes, could have just been, nasty little kids who were trying to get money to go to a movie. And so that may have been something that came across, and that's possibly what happened. Do you believe that, Nina?
Sure, I believe that. It's like mass hysteria. One person starts something, and then it's just domino effect.
Right. And the other thing is sort of, people have said, and I'm sure you got this in your research too, that priming and pareidolia. Do you know what pareidolia is?
Wait, I think I have that too. Oh my God.
Is that in your notes?
It's going to be. Yeah, priming is tied to pareidolia, which is the unification of the sensory data into a familiar subject based on the perception of complex lines, patterns, and gradations.
Okay, what does that mean in plain English?
That that means that I don't know how to say it, but all right, you're gonna have to help me out here.
Okay. Pareidolia is if let's just say you're looking, or here I'll go even simpler. It's a sunny day, clouds are overhead in the sky, not cloudy, but blue sky and clouds, and you look up and you see the clouds, and you start to make out a bunny rabbit out of the clouds. Now, obviously, it's not creating a bunny rabbit. There is no bunny rabbit cloud. It may have kind of looks like a bunny rabbit because of the way it's shaped. That's pareidolia. Your mind is looking at something that really isn't what it is, but in order for you to perceive it and understand it, it's making it relatable to you. And so your mind, you're seeing a bunny rabbit in the sky in the form of clouds. That's basically what it is. And so many people do this a lot of times, and they see things in windows. Typically, you see a lot of photographs, haunted, sort of mysterious, possible ghost captures in windows. And all it is a play on reflection of light, reflections of things in and outside of wherever that window is at the moment that snapshot is done. And so that's sort of pareidolia, when you see something that is not necessarily it, but your mind is creating it to be something else. That's what pareidolia is. So this go ahead.
That was a very good explanation.
Okay, that's lesson 101. Do you think that this could be the possibility also that people think because maybe it's sort of not dark out, but let's just say it's like 8 o'clock in September or October, and it is getting dark. There's still some light out there, but the way that the light is casting a shadow from your eyebrow area down to your cheekbone, and creating that dark area underneath your eyes or over your eyes while you're talking to someone. Could that create this pareidolia, this phenomenon?
I mean, I'm sure if you really want to go that deep, I'm sure that could happen. Yes. Do I really believe all of it? I don't know, but
well,
it's a
I don't want to get into believing yet,
right.
What your beliefs are, but
it's a possibility. Yes, sure, it's a possibility.
But what I'm saying is that people may perceive these things or these kids as black-eyed kids, but it merely could be just something that is naturally a natural phenomenon that's happening, that your mind is interpreting it because you may have just read about black-eyed kids, or you may have saw the movie The Black-Eyed Kids, because there was a movie, I think, in 2013.
Yeah, I read that too.
There you go. Is that in your notes too?
Oh yeah, no, but I read it.
And so, a lot of different things may have come across during your regular normal life that, again, you may subconsciously not even realize that has been absorbed into your brain. And when you see something, you interpret it as that, and that could be creating the fear, and then thus creating this fictitious story or fictitious experience that just may not have happened at all.
I agree. It's a possibility. Yes.
So, okay. So we talked about basically the descriptions and characteristics of black-eyed kids, and one thing I did want to bring up too. This sort of has religion involved in it too, because the story goes. Excuse me. The story goes that the devil, or I guess demons itself or themselves, are not allowed to. They're not allowed to enter into your life without you accepting them. Like, you have to accept evil in order for evil to come in and then take over. You have to announce to the devil that you are at his feet, and you worship, and you are beckoning them or him to come forward into your life to, take your soul, or do some sort of, give me power and I'll give you my soul type of deal. That has been known in religious times, in religious scripts for many, many years. Is that correct, Nina?
Yes, that's correct.
So you have to be, in order for the devil to take over, you basically have to accept them in. You have to allow them in. And the story with black-eyed kids is that they can't do anything unless you invite them in. That you have to allow them to come through. They can't just walk in your door. I don't know what I'm saying today. Your door. Just like what Brian Bethel had just said, that they can't come into his car unless he accepts and invites them to come in. Do you think that this story, again, it's a story, that has been created with a mixture of sort of some kid on the internet creating a character and the sort of religious connotations mixed together to make it more believable?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if a kid would go that deep.
No, and I'm not saying the kid, but I think it's whoever
invented the character. Correct. Or the thing.
Right, or the stories.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Sure. You have to in order to create a character, you need to pull from stuff that you know, right? So
Right.
some stuff that you know and some stuff that you do research on. So yeah, it's a possibility for sure.
Right, and to make it believable, to make it more real. And so people who are religious will know that you can't invite the devil. I mean, the devil can't come in unless you invite them in. And so if you are evil, then you've accepted the devil. That's what many religious people believe in that idea. And so if someone tells them this story, they're going to say, shit, that's a devil. That those little kids has got to be demons and the devils. That oh my God, that's true. I know it. I read it in the scriptures and blah, 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 blah. And so it becomes, there's more evidence without even putting forth evidence for the fact that these things are quote unquote real by people relating to the fact because of the religious connotation attached to it. And I think that's compounded. I think that's what's created and hyped up this idea of black-eyed kids to where it is now, where people believe them to be true.
I totally agree with that.
What other things that you found interesting or that you found to make you believe that they're a hoax during your research? Anything that sort of stuck out in your head? Maybe a story or some person or a fact or something like that?
Well, I didn't really put much truth into any of the stories that I heard. So to me, it just all sounded like something fictitious from jump. So anything that they said really to me is like, yeah, right. I don't believe it at all. So there wasn't one thing that stuck out at me at all.
Well, you automatically, anyway, don't believe a lot of stories.
That is true, but I do have an open mind. So if I read something or if you say something to me, do I not come around if I think it's something that's plausible?
Very rarely, but I can't say no.
Very rarely. I just did it tonight. I said I agree.
Well, no. But I mean, for this story, for these types of stories to be true,
right?
I mean, obviously, from what I'm gathering, is you don't believe them at all to be true.
No.
Okay, and this will be one topic that I think we'll agree on because I don't believe them to be true either. I think here's the thing, and on a previous show that I did, I talked about, and I did a sort of correlation to indigo children. Have you ever heard of indigo children?
I have not. Okay.
There is this, and again, I have not done a lot of research on indigo children at all. It's a characteristic that groups of people have been putting upon this certain group of children that are more likely. Am I making you tired, Nina?
I'm sorry. Did you hear that?
You're on a microphone. We can hear everything.
Sorry.
This idea, people have put this label indigo on children who are, in essence, autistic, or autistic, and maybe have what they call Asperger disease or Asperger syndrome, as well as ADHD. I know within the last 10, 15 years, there have been many kids that have, been labeled this, have been diagnosed with autism and ADHD, and the need or the feel that people need to medicate these children for things that we're not even sure of what is the cause or what is the end result of. But many people outside of that medical community have labeled these kids indigo children. And to be an indigo child, you are sort of like on a higher level than a regular human being. And one of the reasons why they're saying that is because there is this thing, and I'm going to get a little scientific and medical, Nina, but I'm going to sound probably stupid because I don't know the full aspect and the terminology and all that stuff. But we all have codons. They're called codons. And I think I'm getting feedback from my own headphones. Let me see. Hold on. Hello, 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 hello. Okay, maybe this will be better. Turned on the gain. Can you still hear me, Nina?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so we all have codons. They are what make up the DNA. Each of us are born with 64 codons, but only 20 of them are actually active. Only 20 of them are I don't know, alive, being utilized in our body. The remaining are basically dormant. They're not being used at all. These indigo or autistic children have 24. So they have 4 more codons that are active in their body. This has been scientifically measured and diagnosed and evaluated. And again, I don't know if they know the whole reason why, or I just haven't done a lot of research to figure out why it has happened. But they are different. Not different in a way that they're completely inhuman, but they are different. They are heightened. And so many of the things that we may struggle with medically, these children do not. And so people have then combined this whole black-eyed children phenomenon with these indigo children. And because they are 4 codons more than us, that they have this power, that they have this ability to connect interdimensionally and all this other stuff that people were talking about. I apologize, I don't have all of the information, but you guys who are watching can do a lot more research than I can, give you tonight, and you can learn more about it. But there is this correlation to it that I'm not fully understanding and understand why. But what fascinated me was the idea that these kids do have 4 codons more than what I have. I mean, I'm sure I only have 20. I haven't been diagnosed or whatever, evaluated. But do you think, Nina, that there is something to this, where these kids who are labeled as autistic and ADHD and Asperger and all that, that most of them have 4 more codons than we do? And could it be that these kids who people claim to be black-eyed children, I don't know, may possess some sort of power? Or is it just all bullshit?
It's all BS. Come on.
But you were open-minded.
But come on, now you're going to take kids that have Asperger's disease and you're going to say that these black-eyed children are like some form of that or whatever. That's ridiculous.
Well, I think what people are trying to do is turn the feeling around from it being a negative thing to a more positive thing. And the fear that these people encounter is our own fear of understanding who they are.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, it's not far-fetched. I mean, it is completely ridiculous in sort of my world. I can't see how the two are related at all. But I get and I understand why they're trying to do that.
They're trying to spin a horror. Well, horror is probably not the right word, but a horror. What are they? It's not a movie.
An experience?
No. They're trying to take this black-eyed children thing and spin it into something positive. That's ridiculous. It's out there because it's a folk tale. It's something to scare people with. That's what that is. It's not reality. And how can somebody go take something that's clearly not? It's fake.
Well, because people believe that these black-eyed kids are real, and I'm not here to judge, to say that anybody who has a story or an experience with what they believe to be black-eyed children, I'm not negating your experience. I'm not saying that you're crazy or loony or out of your mind. I think you believe that you saw what it is that you saw. I just don't think that I don't think that they're real because I think there's too much evidence or too many variables in the mix that lead me to believe that it is not a real phenomenon or not something that exists. It's something that we're making up in our mind and creating it to be.
If this was some type of disease or some type of something, don't you think there would be something about it somewhere? Don't you think people would be speaking out about it? And don't you think that these children would eventually become adults and be walking around with the same kind of eye problem?
No, because what black-eyed children basically are not human. So they're not of this earth or of this planet.
But what I'm saying is, for the people that are spinning it, saying that it's a positive thing,
yes.
or blah blah blah, they don't exist. If they existed, they'd be grown, or parents would be speaking out about this horrible disease. If they're dying as children, that's the reason why you don't see any black-eyed adults. If they're dying as children, don't you think people are going to speak out about it? A foundation, something.
Well, who's dying as children?
These black-eyed kids, like, let's just say that they have a disease or whatever the case may be, right? Or some kind of malfunction. And the reason why there are no black-eyed adults is because the children don't live to be an adult. Right?
Yes and no. I think what people believe to be indigo children believe the idea that these children have come down from the universe. The universe gave them these children. Now, I'm going to go off on something that I think you're probably going to laugh inside your head about.
I'm already tuning out.
I already hear it. But this is what they believe. Yes, there was physical birth, yes. But the inner soul or the inner you was brought down by the universe, and it's the universe's way of creating enlightenment and uplifting on this planet so that it gets us to a higher frequency and a higher ground. I'm probably going way over your head, Nina, but I'm sure that there are many people out there who understand what I'm talking about. And so, yes, they believe that they're human and they were born, but they in essence are not human because they were brought down or brought here from a higher thing, not a god, but a higher thing, meaning the universe, as a mission, basically, to uplift and enlighten this world and help us get to the next level of where we need to be within the universe itself. And so they may have characteristics of what black-eyed children are, but it's a phase. And so it could be something that is, maybe it's done between a certain age time frame, and then after that, that's it. And that's why we probably don't have as many black-eyed adults as stories would suggest. And so then they are off onto their regular life. But these are things, this is not my belief, Nina. These are just things that I've heard that people are talking about and trying to understand and trying to take that negative away and make it more positive, because they're saying that it's our fear. When we see these children, it's us who are creating the negative. These kids are not there to harm or to maim us or kill us, that they're there to help. But it's our fear that we have as humans, as imbecile humans, as they would say, unenlightened humans, because we don't understand their way, or we don't understand their higher brain power. Did you hear anything that I said, or did you just tune out from the very beginning?
After you said they come down from the universe, you totally lost me.
See, and you say you have an open mind.
I listened. I did. I listened. I heard it. If somebody wants to believe that, more power to them. But I don't think that. I mean, So these black-eyed children, they're not the ones running around knocking on car doors and trying to get in people's cars and stuff like that. These people that come down from the universe, they're like the good people, and they're trying to do what? They're walking around at night trying to help people. I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
Yes, I know it doesn't make sense. I'm just stating what I've heard, but there's also the idea that somebody else has said, or some other groups have said, that these indigo children were put here to fight these black-eyed children. That's another story.
Wow, we got to stop talking about this because this is getting my a headache.
It's not an easy topic to talk about, and there are so many people who have their hand in the cookie jar of the black-eyed kids that, create their own theory or their own idea of what these things are. You can go down, and that's why they call it going down the rabbit hole, because you can go down the rabbit hole and never get out.
Oh, we need to stop because this is ridiculous.
All right. I wanted to actually share with everybody the interview that I did with David Weatherly, and I mentioned him in the very beginning. I did an interview with David Weatherly, who is an author, an investigator, and researcher. He's written many books on the paranormal phenomenon. Specifically, he has written about strange intruders, which are just a class of all these different types of creatures that, or Nina's favorite word, the cryptids, and one of which includes the black-eyed kids or black-eyed children. He also wrote a book specifically about black-eyed children, and I had interviewed him a few years back, and I asked him what he thought of what these things were, what his thoughts were, because of all of his research and interviews with people who experienced it. What did he think about it? And this is what he said. So I'm going to play the interview. It's just about a minute or two long.
So, with all the theories that are out there about these black-eyed children, either it being vampires or interdimensional beings, jinns, or alien hybrids, what do you believe that they could be?
What I believe is that they are something similar to the jinn. I know a lot of people tend to think that these are jinn in this guise. I don't really believe that, but I believe there's something similar. I think there's some kind of interdimensional being that has an ability to, shift into our level of awareness or our reality. And I'm not entirely sure what their purpose is, but I do believe that it's sinister because nothing really good seems to come out of these encounters. And the closer the encounters, the more tragic the circumstances seem to be.
Now,
So Nina, from his explanation,
tragic the circumstances.
What do you gather from it?
So
Nina, from that.
Hold on, I have to.
Yeah, I'm getting you.
Yeah, because I can't. I can only hear it on the. I can't hear it through the.
Through your headphones?
Through Skype, yeah.
Sorry.
It's all right. What do I think about his explanation?
Yeah.
If they really do exist, yeah, I think that they are something evil and demonic to them. What did you call them? Gens? What is that?
Djinn, D-J-I-N-N. Have you ever heard of that?
Djinn. No, I never heard that.
It's it's basically a characteristic of a. Well, again, there's a debate on whether or not they're evil or not. But within the Muslim Islamic religion, they believe that these jinns are like demons. For us, it's demons. For them, they call it jinns, and it's the same thing. Similar ways in what the Catholic religion calls demons, but more sinister in nature. They sort of follow you around and are on your back. If you ever catch one, they say you can never let it go, and it's just there for the rest of your life. And so, people have said that these black-eyed children could be these jinns just coming to human form.
guess that's a theory, but...
What about the idea that I mentioned in the interview to him, alien hybrid?
I read that too.
Could they be a mix of aliens and humans?
I don't know if I really believe that either.
It seems like it may be plausible to you.
I mean, is it anything? I think anything can be possible because nothing is ever. There's a lot of things you can't disprove, right?
Well, wait. Before you go any further, though, in order for something to be an alien hybrid, you have to believe in aliens, then.
Yeah, but I don't. But I'm just saying.
But that's what I'm shocked about, because you just said that anything is possible.
Right, because I don't know for sure. I don't believe in it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist out there. I'm just saying I don't believe in it.
Okay.
So anything is like I said, if I don't experience it myself, I don't believe it to be true.
And that goes with a lot of people. I mean, that goes for me too. I mean, there are things within the paranormal phenomenon that I don't believe in yet because I haven't experienced it yet, you know?
Right.
So I can't say for sure. I have never seen a Bigfoot, so can I say that they exist? I hear what people do, and I hear what people say, and I see videos and stuff, but I'm not 100% on whether or not Bigfoot is real.
Right. So, I mean, is it, like I said, God created us, right? So, and I would be small-minded to think that he just created Earth and called it a day. He created the universe. I'm sure there are other living things out there. I don't know what kind of things they are. Who knows? But I don't believe in aliens. So, but is it possible? I'm sure it can be possible. If aliens exist, I'm sure it can be possible.
It's funny because you just said, well, God made the universe, and so he had to have made other life somewhere else.
Yeah, but there could be life. It doesn't mean that it's human life, or like it could be plants or animals or something like that. It doesn't have to be other living things with big heads and dark eyes.
Why not?
It could be humans just in another dimension, just like us, just regular old people.
So, but it's still an alien, and so if, say that alien in another dimension who, you know, we live on oxygen, right? And so maybe those other quote-unquote humans that live on another dimension or another planet somewhere else, they don't live on oxygen. They live on something else. If these two bred, wouldn't that make something strange? I mean, a brother and a sister have a kid. It's going to be deformed, no?
Yeah, that's what I hear.
So if another being from another planet would mate with a human from Earth, wouldn't it become a little deformed in a way?
Well, sure. It's going to have characteristics from both parents, just like when animals...
Not necessarily, because it can become mutated, because you're mixing two species that can't connect.
So it's just like animals. Two different animals mate, you make a different species.
Not every intermingling of species are acceptable. Like humans can't go and have sex with a cow and have a half human, half cow.
That's correct.
Right. It just doesn't happen. It can't.
So then what makes you think that they can go and mate with an alien?
I don't know.
Maybe they can't do that.
I don't know, but I haven't seen it for myself, so I don't know.
That's what I'm telling you. There are no aliens out there.
All right, well, we're getting off topic a little bit, but that should be another show that we do about aliens.
Oh, God, aliens.
We'd have a nice argument there. But I have another audio clip that I wanted to play before we go even further down this rabbit hole. This is from that same website, blackeyedchildrenreports.com, and this is short. I think it's short. I hope it's short. An interview with the same woman, Vonda McDaniel, on the Haunted Harvest Moon. And she interviews a woman by the name of Deborah Sihon from Pennsylvania, who claims that she had an experience with black-eyed children. I didn't listen to this all the way through, so I'm hoping it's a good story, but I'm going to play it for you now.
Now, Deborah, have you ever had an encounter, have you ever heard of the black-eyed children before your encounter?
No, I never heard of black-eyed children, period. No.
So tell us about your encounter with these children.
Okay, I'm having a typical day where I am a mom and I'm taking my daughter to cheerleading practice, and we're running a little bit behind, and the day's just going typically how it is behind of what you're supposed to be doing. And we're in the car, we're going to the high school, and I drop her off at cheerleading practice. I stay at cheerleading practice for a while with her, and I'm coming home, and I decide I'm going to take the back way to come home, which the back way, I mean the dirt roads, the back roads, windy, traveling, country.
Deep country.
Deep country, yep, deep country. So I'm driving along, and it's dusk. It's getting dusk now because the football games are at night, and I see two children walking up the hill. And this is a pretty big hill that we're going up. So, it's a hill, and I'm thinking, what in the world are these two kids doing at dusk walking out here in the country? I would never let my kids do that,
Right.
So I go up the hill, and I am, slowing down to make sure everything's okay. Don't pick up hitchhikers, never have, never would. But I do pull over, and they stop, and I crack my window, and I say, you guys need something? Do your moms know you're out here? Do you want me to call somebody for you? What are you out here for? Because this is just not a place where somebody is walking. You just don't walk here. This is country. It's not like you see people on city streets. It's the country.
Right.
So they didn't acknowledge me at first. As Brian said, they were dressed in hoodies and blue jeans. And I said, again, do you guys need something? Do you want me to call your moms? Do you want to use my cell phone? What can I do for you? And one of them said, give us a ride. We want a ride. And I said, no, I'm not going to give you a ride, but I'll call your moms for you. If my kids were out here walking, I would want someone to stop and call me so I could come pick up my kids.
Right, yes.
And, and they didn't say anything. They stood there. They did not look at me, though. And I said, again, can I call your moms? Do you want me to, call somebody for you, your dad, your grandpa, someone? And the kid said to me, put your window down. No, I'm not rolling my window down anymore. Put your window down. We need a ride. No, I'll call your mom for you, but I'm not putting my window down. And he became very agitated. And at the point where he became agitated, I began to panic. And I knew I had to get that window up and get out of there.
Right.
So my phone, I went to dial. I was going to dial my husband, but my phone didn't have service. So I had no service in the area, which was unusual because I always have service in the area. It's not like I never traveled that area before. So as I go to roll up my window, I physically can't roll up my window. I'm like, oh boy, this is not good. And I start to panic. I really start to panic. And just as I look over to try to roll my window up again, this kid looks at me, and he is just as pale-skinned as pale skin can be, and so is the other one, who said nothing, and eyes just as black as two pieces of coal. And I'm like freaking out at that point. And I don't usually freak out. I have spirit encounters. I don't freak out, but I freaked out and started saying my St. Michael prayer. I did manage to get my window up, and I took off. And I looked back. I didn't see them. There's no place for them to go because it's all woods. It's trees. It's all woods.
Right.
And I came right home. I didn't want to get out of my car. I drove my car right up to the house and got out, came in the house, and I did not want to go back and pick her up. Came in my bedroom. I slammed the door. My husband's looking at me like, you are a crazy woman. No, I'm not a crazy woman, but I don't want to talk about it right now. And I did go back and get her, but I didn't go back that way.
Oh, I don't blame you.
I went a total different way.
Wow.
So it was quite scary. It was quite scary, very unnerving.
So there you have another account. This by Deborah Sihan from Pennsylvania. What I immediately find similar to both stories that we just heard from Brian and one from Deborah is that they're both wearing hoodies. Right, Nina?
Yep.
And another similarity is that it's at nighttime.
Right.
So, I don't know why I'm getting feedback. It's really annoying. You don't have anything on, Nina?
Nope.
What I find when I hear these stories is that if it's at nighttime, somebody's wearing a hoodie, how do you see their eyes anyway? How do you see the whites of somebody's eyes if it's at nighttime and they're wearing a hood?
Well, what the hood doesn't go like over your eyes.
No, but what it does is it casts a shadow over the face from whatever light is out, either the moon or street lights or whatever. How do you see someone's eyes at nighttime when they're wearing a hoodie?
But they gotta look at you.
Yeah, they look at you, but I think
there's a way you can see the whites of people's eyes.
I think it would be very difficult to be able to see it. It just seems very strange that many of these stories of black-eyed children always notoriously happen at nighttime, and always, most of the stories that I've heard have hooded sweatshirts, that they're wearing hoodies. And so, here's the thing. I don't know if I want to go down this road or not, but I'll just mention it briefly and then we can get off the road. This feedback is really getting on my nerves. I don't know why sometimes I hear it and sometimes I don't. All right, I'm going to talk like this. So, I don't know why I'm getting it. Okay, so anyway, when I forgot the guy's name. Oh, George Zimmer? Who is the guy who, the white guy who killed that black kid?
The one on the subway?
No, the one, I can't remember what state it was in.
George Florida.
Was that in Florida?
Yeah,
oh, yeah, that's
George,
right. Zimmer or
you're
Zimmerman or something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I remembered, and it's sort of become this sort of characteristic of that incident, was that the kid was wearing a hooded sweatshirt, and he felt that this kid was a thug. And notoriously, many African Americans have always said that they've been sort of what's the word? It's been distinguished that if you are a black teenager wearing a hoodie, you're basically up to no good. That you're going to do something that is not right and not good, or you're trying to hide something, or you're trying to hide yourself because you're about to do something that may not be within the law or the confines of the law. And so I don't know where that started and how that whole wearing a hooded sweatshirt and being African American came from, and the correlation to doing something bad. I don't know where that started, but to me, it seems like this type of experience with black-eyed kids has that same connotation to it. No?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think somewhere along the line, over years or whatever since the 90s, that this phenomenon has aspects to it that again have been pulled from pop culture, or have been pulled from everyday life in society to make it believable, to make it seem as though. And so this woman automatically not automatically, but she thought it was strange that these kids were walking in this country area, and they were wearing hoods, and they were demanding to be put into her car or be invited to go into this woman's car, and she felt it to be negative all of a sudden, and there was some connotation when she was, I guess, from what they were saying, coupled with the idea that they were wearing these hoods, and it was at nighttime, she was afraid. I just, personally, I don't believe that these stories are Black Eyed Children's. I think she may have had an encounter with kids, and that she was not able to see the eyes because it was dark, and she may have read stories online after this incident and said, holy shit, maybe they are Black Eyed Kids, because, kids in that neighborhood or in that field or in that town would never act that way. No?
True.
Would you care to elaborate or no?
No, I mean, what do you want me to say?
I don't know.
It's fear. So fear got her, 1,000%. Do I believe that there were some children there? Sure. Do I believe they were Black-eyed kids? No. It was pure fear that overtook her, and that's why she couldn't roll up her window, because she got scared. Maybe the kid became a little agitated, and then all of a sudden the kid disappeared. But disappear? Where could you disappear? She just said there was woods. Oh, maybe they went into the woods.
Right.
Like, these are things that you decide to make up in your head and you decide to believe are true. And now all of a sudden it turns into this story. She's on the radio. She's being interviewed, blah, 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 blah. And then it turns into something more. And I'm sure she embellished a little here, embellished a little there. And we call it a day. We made a Black-eyed kid sandwich.
Yeah, I don't know. There's way too many variables, and there's way too many question marks along this topic and these stories that I'm not saying that, again, I'm not saying that people have not had these experiences. I just don't think that they can be labeled as Black-eyed kids or Black-eyed children. I just find it, I just find it hard to connect the dots on this and come to the idea that they are. I know that there are other accounts too that people see kids with white eyes, and they're called the white-eyed children. That to me is a direct correlation to Children of the Corn, the movie. And so, again, it goes back to the idea of that labeling, priming, and pareidolia. We all saw that movie, and so do we have that in our head when we see children who we can't make out their eyes right away, that all of a sudden we just think, okay, that's a Black-eyed kid experience or white-eyed kid experience? I just don't know. I mean, in the very beginning, when I started to research this, not this time, but years ago, I was believing it. I really was a believer of the idea that these things existed and that they could be. I was trying to figure out what they were, and if you sort of listened to when I was interviewing David Weatherly, my questioning was, do you believe that they are alien hybrid, or that they are djinns, or that they are demons, or whatever? I was trying to figure out what they were at that time in my life. I was trying to figure out what it was. But after years of, again, more stories that come forward and more research that I've done, specifically now within the last 5 years or 4 years or so, there really hasn't been that much. There was a height in 2013. I'm sure you may have come across this, Nina, in your research, that in 2013 there was a height of these stories coming forward. But most of it was the marketing and promotion for that movie, for the Black-eyed Children. Mm-hmm. So it just doesn't, what's real and what's not real. There are people that put out fake videos and fake stories just to hype a movie, and it's mixed into the real. And so now you've got a dirty soup.
Right, exactly.
So
I guess the reason why I've never come across any of those black-eyed children or aliens is because I never watch any of those scary movies, so I don't have any kind of preconceived notion in my head.
You haven't been swayed, or you haven't been primed.
Correct. That is right.
We learned a new word today, priming.
I know, isn't it great?
Nice, right? All right, so there are other more natural, what do you call it? I keep saying labeling tonight, but there's more of a natural explanation. That's a good word for people with these dark eyes. Do you know any of the natural ones, Nina, or the natural characteristics?
I have a list of that as well.
Oh, look at you with your notes. Give me one of them.
Wait, hold on.
I'm just asking you the question.
Okay. Blown pupil.
Mm-hmm.
You want more?
Well, what is blown pupil?
Oh, a blown pupil. I thought you were going to define it for me. It's referring to the pupil that is dilated beyond normal limits due to pressure in the brain.
Okay. And that's a natural phenomenon that happens to people medically.
Correct.
What else?
There is 80s tonic pupil. And that's a condition where one pupil is noticeably larger than the other. In this condition, the one pupil gradually grows smaller and smaller until it appears to be permanently in that state. However, it will expand to light, but far slower than natural reaction.
Okay, so I guess it's like a delayed reaction of your pupil or an overexposure of the pupil at certain points between darkness and light.
Correct.
Anything else?
Drugs.
Right.
I'm not even going to say this drug. Phenylephrine? Whatever. It's found in Sudafed. Adrenaline, epinephrine, anti-muscarcerins. Oh, boy. It's a lot of stuff here. Ecstasy, that I got.
Oh, okay.
Antidepressants, those can cause your pupils to be larger than normal.
Right, and in the late 90s and early 2000s, ecstasy was a rising drug amongst teenagers. It was found in clubs. It was like a Tic Tac to kids while they were in clubs. And so could this have created it? Could this have helped this phenomenon?
Like I said, anything is possible. It's possible.
It's possible.
Maybe that's why they were so angry when, they told them, no, you can't get in. And that's what caused them to be so angry and start banging on windows and scratching on doors and doing all this weird crap.
Just strung out on some sort of drug that made you flip. But one of the side effects was, blowing up your pupil.
Right. I would take that reasoning over any of these other things.
I mean, that's the most logical cause for this. I mean, that's the natural and logical cause for anything. But if you have someone who, you can't even interview. You can't interview a black-eyed kid. So you can't say, oh, no, you can't find a kid that says, no, I'm not on ecstasy. These are my eyes. I am a black-eyed kid. So you can't interview them, right?
Right, exactly.
So you're never going to know. You're really never going to know what the cause or the issue is, really.
That's correct. Just like everything else we talk about, we're never really going to know.
Unless you have an experience yourself.
Correct. But I don't think I'm going to see Bigfoot anytime soon. And I don't really think that aliens are going to come down and take me, because that would be the last person that I would take.
I pray to the alien gods every day. Come and take me. I'm ready.
I know you do. And when you go missing, I will know where you are, so don't worry.
Okay. You tell everybody where I went.
I will make sure. If I could get on Facebook Live, I'll tell everybody what happened. It might take me a good minute, but I'll let everybody know.
Is there anything else that you wanted to express about black-eyed children? I mean, we've gone through a whole lot of stuff. And again, this story in particular, or this phenomenon in particular, is something that really can't be researched other than listening to people's experiences. There has been no evidence whatsoever that has come forward to say that black-eyed children or black-eyed kids exist. There is nothing. There is no photographs, no video, no one-on-one interview. There's nothing. People can say the same thing towards spirits and ghosts, but I think there's been a lot of stuff that are questionable, or even UFOs and aliens, but there are things that are questionable that have come forward. There really isn't anything that has come forward with black-eyed children that will it could that is legit, that wasn't a hoax, because there are many things that have been put forward on the internet that are hoaxes, that people they put in contacts or whatever that say that that this is a black-eyed kid that they came in contact with, but it's just bullshit. It's just a hoax. There's nothing really that has come forward that is based in fact or in truth that has any legitimacy to the phenomenon of black-eyed kids. Is there anything else, Nina, that you wanted to mention or bring up to make sure that people understood or know about?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything, but it's just so convenient. These black-eyed children, they're only out at night. It's just a setup for a scary story, and that's what people remember, and then that's why they have this effect on people. That's why they think that, hey, I just saw a black-eyed kid. This kid went a little crazy. This kid's in a hoodie. This kid's that's all I have to say. I like I said, I don't believe it. Clearly, the people that have listened to us before know that I'm totally don't believe a lot of things, but this is really just far-fetched for me.
There's, I was just looking at something else here. I don't know how long this is. Wait, that's 466. Oh, okay, right. This is a shorter clip. Do you know Keith Johnson from Ghost Hunters?
Keith Johnson.
He was on a bunch of episodes for Ghost Hunters. He was like the quote-unquote demonologist. Typically, it was like him and his wife.
I don't recall.
Well, on this same website, the blackeyedchildrenreports.com, and again, the same podcast, The Haunted Harvest Moon, she interviews Keith Johnson and... where is it? Oh, Keith's opinion on the black-eyed children. Do you want to hear what he thinks?
Yeah, lay it on me.
All right, let's play this. This is from Keith Johnson on the Haunted Harvest Moon, and he talks about his opinion about what he thinks black-eyed children are. Let me play it.
What are your thoughts on black-eyed children being demonic in nature? Do you
I
believe
would
they
think,
are?
yeah. I would say that could be a demonic manifestation. I've certainly prayed about these situations, and it's ironic that when I was studying some things about black-eyed children, and I thought how hurtful is this to actually affect a child or a child image like this, black-eyed children coming up to you, to use that image, but. I prayed about this. I went out for some reason. Children were attracted to me. They kept looking at me and smiling at me. Children that didn't know me, they just kept making faces and smiling at me. So it was the opposite of that. It was just the opposite of that. And I was shown how beautiful, reminded how beautiful children are. But
Right.
yeah, things like that. That's a deception. They're using images of children to frighten people, to show people that they're being watched. However, doing that, they risk giving themselves away. They do risk giving themselves away, so they're going to proceed very cautiously and to a very limited extent. I'm talking about the spirits themselves.
Well, of course, when you pose a question to a demonologist, of course a demonologist is going to say that this is demonic in nature, right?
Sorry, I was on mute listening. Yeah, well, that's his job, right? So,
Right.
what am I going to say? No, I don't. I don't believe that that's a demon.
I here's again. I don't know if I want to go down this road or not, but I'm gonna anyway. He mentions that he did a lot of research and on black-eyed children. I'd love to know what research he did. And
He's probably talking to people that have had encounters. That's got to be what his research is. There's no other way to research it.
right. And so automatically you come to the conclusion that it's demonic. I have a hard time swallowing that pill with people that again, and I've said this about a million times before, that there are no experts in the paranormal field at all. No one is an expert on any of the topics that we talk about. It is all suggestion. It is all opinion. There is nothing definitive that anybody can say is the one truth for, because you can't have definitive answers on what the paranormal is. And so here we have another example of someone who is stating as fact that they are demons. Again, putting a negative concept on something for which you have nothing to base it on other than hearing other people's stories and hearing their emotions and their fears upon something that they don't understand. And just because they don't understand it, why is it automatically bad?
I agree with you, but he wouldn't be asked to do interviews if he was not going to give his opinion on that stuff. I mean, it is his opinion.
But he didn't state it as an opinion, really. I mean, he did say, "I feel that they are demonic. I've done my research, and this is what I've come to." That's what he's stating, and I just have a hard time when people do that.
Well, think about it. If he's a demonologist, he's got to say, people look at him as an expert. So
right, but he has to be able to decipher what is. I mean, his job is not to say everything is demonic. His job is to know what is and what is not. How do you do that? I have no clue. But he has come to that conclusion with this. And so if he didn't have, I don't know, the facts or the truth or whatever it is, from something legitimate to make that other than his feelings or his feelings based upon somebody else's feelings, that's not being truthful to the public or even to the paranormal field itself.
His whole job is his opinion. There's no way. How are you going to prove if something is demonic or not?
I mean, correct. That's why it's sort of laughable whenever I hear the terminology or the label of demonologist, because, and again, I don't want to get down this road, but taking demonology classes and exorcism classes and all this stuff, and then you become certified in demonology is a complete hoax. But that's another topic and another story. I just have a hard time when people like this, and I'm not saying anything bad about him. I'm just saying that when people who are in this field claim to say that this is definitive. He could have easily said, listen, I've heard stories of people say that they are evil. I just don't know what they are. I haven't been able to sit someone down who claims to be a black-eyed child and find out and study whether or not that they are. So how can you give a definitive answer like that, even though it may have been based on feelings? How can you state that, yes, they are demonic in nature?
He can't state that because he'd have to state that about well, no, what I'm saying is he can't come out and say things like that. He can't say, I didn't sit down with them and definitively blah, blah, blah. He's not going to say anything like that because he can't do that with any of his cases. He can't sit down with any of the demons. So he can't come out and say anything like that. He's got to say, yes, I do believe. Yes, I think it is. But he can't come out and say that stuff, Toe, because then it's...
But why... I mean, I've known demonologists who have said certain things are not demonic in nature, that they are good, and vice versa.
And that's an opinion, because you can't sit down and talk to a demon.
Correct. They basically have expressed their feelings upon incidences that have happened or experiences or whatever, and they can decipher the two. But again, I think this is sort of like, you know, when a snowball rolls down a hill, it just keeps gathering the snow, and that snowball is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I think that's just what this is. It's all this that this is. It was started off as a small, possibly fake story in the very beginning, but has snowballed into, you know, what now demonologists and so-called experts in the field are stating to be truthful and factful.
I agree with you 1,000%.
I think it's a shame, and that's a lot of times why I like to do this show, and I like to, you know, talk with you and talk with other people to weed out the bullshit that's out there, and to be able to have a real honest conversation about what it is that I talk about me personally within the paranormal field, what we're trying to look for and what we're trying to find. Now, if you automatically put a silo and a cover by means of a label on something, you are limiting yourself to expanding your knowledge on that topic. If you have basically in his mind, and people like him have already put that phenomenon to bed, put it in the file and put it in the drawer, as labeling it as what they believe it to be. And that's where shit goes wrong in this field. That's where the idea that people who say, well, you got to be open-minded to be in the paranormal field, to me, that's a closed-minded attitude toward things, because you're not allowing yourself to leave that lid off and be able to understand what it is that's in there and not automatically put a label to it, because when you do that, you're done with it. You put it to the side and now you move on to something else. And what happens is, from what I believe, and I've said this, again, another terminology that I've said many, many times, is that the paranormal field is like a web. It's like a spider web. I believe that all of this phenomenon, whether it be aliens, ghosts and spirits and cryptids and Bigfoot and whatever, I believe somehow, I don't know how, but this is something that I've been trying to research and expand on for a couple of years now, is that somehow they're all connected in a way. And I even said it in my book, Nina, that this sort of light and energy, for some reason, I find in a lot of these stories and a lot of the incidences and experiences that happen with all of these different types of phenomenon, that you always hear about light and energy, that there's these two magnetic things are somehow embedded in all of these different areas. And so that, to me, is sort of that web that is connecting all of them. And so if you shut off, sorry, I'm on my soapbox, Nina, I'll get off in a second. When you shut off this topic of black-eyed children and automatically say that it is demonic or that they're evil kids or whatever, you've created a blockage in this spider web, where if you cut off the blood from that, it's not going to feed anything else, and so everything else is going to die off, because the knowledge that you could include from the black-eyed kids, if it is true or not, I don't know, but if you include whatever the research and the knowledge that you gain from that into the other stuff, you may be able to open up more of the doors or more of the areas to be able to learn more about some other topic. But doing this is just cutting off, and it's just, again, creating these silos where you can't move forward. You can't do anything else. And I think that's where this field is stuck. It is stuck, and nobody is willing to move. There may be a few, but it's not a huge population right now where people are understanding this idea that if you keep doing this, you're not going to move forward. We're not going to go anywhere in understanding the possibilities, whether or not phenomenon is truthful or not, but whether or not the existence is real or not.
Okay. That was a lot. That was a heck of a lot.
Did I make sense, though, or am I just bullshitting? Is it just shit coming out of my mouth?
I understand what you're saying, and I get where you're coming from. And I think that you're you're making a huge generalization with every, like, investigator and or demonologist and or all these people out there that do all of this funky stuff.
No, and I said not everyone. I said there's a small percentage, but it is a small percentage. It is not. It's not the majority, of the way that things operate. I've seen many people. I've listened to many other podcasts and other shows on YouTube and online and social media, and they all do the same thing. They all claim. Number one, they all claim to have an answer to something, because they feel that people feel that if you don't have an answer to something, nobody's going to look up to you. Nobody is going to continually fund your GoFundMe page, or continually donate to your group or whatever, or continually go see you at another conference, paranormal conference somewhere, that if you don't have an answer, people need to have an answer. And I think,
well, that's why people go to those things, because they want an answer.
Correct.
And they feel like they're the experts to give them the answer.
Correct, but they're giving an answer, and you can't give an answer. The answer that people need to hear is that there is no answer, that there are many different plausible answers and possibilities, as you've said, but there's not one definitive answer on things, and that's what people have to understand.
Well, I don't think, maybe I'm naive, but I don't really think people think that, that is the end-all, be-all answer, and there's no other answer.
No, they do.
That's insane. You can't have the answer to any of this stuff.
But this is what happens. I've been to, you came with me that one time to Cooperstown, but we didn't attend any seminars, right?
No, we didn't.
No. I don't think there were even seminars there. I think it was just.
No, they did. They had stuff.
They did?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought they just had what's his name? A Chip Coffee. They just had a gallery reading. I didn't know if they had an actual conference.
I remember there were like some classes on demonology and stuff like that too.
All right, so you've never really attended any of them.
No.
I have, and I've gone to several of them. Not a lot, but I've gone to several of them. And to me, that's the reason why I stopped going to them, it's almost like feeding time at the puppy mill. That it is, people are hungry, as you've said, for answers, and that's what they go there for. They want to learn from what they call "quote unquote" experts. I don't know how we got into this topic, Nina. I apologize. But people go there to get these answers from people, and they will believe everything that comes out of these people's mouths that are up on the stage. They believe everything. And then what happens is they go back to their homes, and then they spew it on social media or within their group or within their town, because a lot of these people then do their own little mini conferences locally in the libraries or in the post offices or whatever. I know that it happens. I know that people do that. And they take the knowledge that they gain from these people who are up on the stage at these bigger conferences and then spew it. And this is how it spreads. And these are the answers. This is what they claim to be is the truth. And it spews and it goes all over the place. And this is how it feeds. And this is why people get into arguments. This is why a lot of times, I don't know if you know about these things, but different paranormal groups fight each other. It's disgusting that, one group claims to know the answer and the truth to something, and another group says the opposite of or a different type of, and they claim that to be true, and both get into an online argument, or both fight internally or externally, basically, to the point where people are taken to other people to court. It's ridiculous, and it's stupid, and it's all a matter of trying to get the truth. And that's why I blame a lot of these people that go to these conferences that talk about shit that they have no idea what they're talking about and state that these things are truth, just like black-eyed children. And for many years, many people have gone to conferences talking about black-eyed children and, again, distributing what that person claims to be the truth to a mass audience, to a group of people that then go back and spread it amongst, locally. And that's what I have a problem with. And that's why I like to do this radio show, because even though I may not know everything and you may not know everything, we have a conversation about it at least, and we leave it up to the listener, the viewer, to make up their own mind. You agree on that?
But that's the way you choose to run, the way you do things, and that's the way they choose to run to do the way they do their things. So
but it's not.
There's always going to be somebody that thinks that they have the answer, and there's always going to be somebody that wants to get to the top first. So those are the people that are going to say what they got to say, do what they got to do to get where they have to get. There are always going to be people that are going to be following them and listening to them, and they kneel down to them and they bow to whatever they say. And you can't fault people. You can't fault the people that are going to the conference, because they just want to learn. They just want to understand. They think that they're getting answers from people that have answers, when in reality nobody has the answer ever. You can't ever have these answers. It's almost impossible to get answers to these things. So, yes, is it the fault? Do you have to put some blame on these people that run conferences that say, yes, this is an absolute truth? Yes. Do they always say it's absolute truth? I don't know. I've never been to one. I've never sat in one. I've never whatever. I don't know if they say this is the way I do, or if they say this is fact. So I can't really comment on any of that stuff, so I don't really know. But the people that are going should know that nothing is 100% proven. So you have to come to that opinion by yourself. Figure it out, what you believe to be true. And don't think that everyone else out there has the answer, because they really don't. Yeah, maybe they have some real life experiences, which is great, but you're never going to be never going to have 100% definitive answer.
And I think that's all well and good, but the majority of people that go to these conferences, they don't make up their mind on their own. They want someone to tell them what it is. And again, it goes along with the fear. They don't want to have a fear. And so when you have fear, you don't have a complete understanding. You're not in control of whatever it is that is giving you that fear. And so in order to release that fear, you need to have an answer, a truth, so that you can make up your mind on what to do next. And that's what a lot of these people go to these conferences, or that's why they listen to a lot of these so-called experts, to get their answers from, so that they can move on with their life, or that they can decide what they need to do next, or what to how to manage, their life or their paranormal interest. How do they go from there? That's one of the reasons why they go to these conferences, and a lot of them also too go there because they want to be able to take a selfie and a picture with somebody that they've seen on TV or whatever. That's what happens a lot of times. But that's why I get upset, and that's why I get pissed off not at the people that go to it, but I get pissed off at the people that are on that stage that make the claims of truth when they can't do that, when they can't make a definitive answer, but they claim that they do, or that there is. So making a definitive answer on black-eyed kids, I don't think we can do that. I say that they're not real. I say it because, one, I've never really experienced it, and two, I just, within my limited scope of research over the years on black-eyed kids, that I see too many things that are questionable to me, and that could be it could be explained away either naturally, as Nina was just talking about, as far as drugs and stuff, or medically, and two, because they all happen at nighttime, and most of these kids are wearing hoodies. So, how do you see their face? How do you see their eyes? And again, the coupled with the fear creates this, paranoia.
And I would like to set the record straight. I don't believe that they're real.
Okay. At this point in your life, you don't believe that they're real.
No.
Right. Okay. I mean, 20 years from now, it could be changed, right?
Anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
But right now, it's a big fat no.
Well, whatever it is, I hope that everyone who watched the show tonight, and who listened to our gargled and non-professional and non-expert discussion and talk, I hope that everyone out there has at least come to their own type of understanding, and like I've always said, hopefully have instilled the energy in you to do more research if you are interested in this topic. It is a topic that has been running the mill for many, many years now, and just hasn't grabbed validity in my book to be able to definitively say what it is, what this story is all about, what this phenomenon can be. I think for me or for anyone to say definitively what it is. As Nina says, anything is possible. And so keep that in mind and do a little bit more research for yourself so that you can come to maybe some sort of conclusion, or at least have more knowledge as to what this type of phenomenon is. Nina, do you want to leave anybody with a last comment?
I still don't believe it.
You've made yourself very clear. I think if people were to say that you believed it, I think they'd be in a coma.
No, I don't have anything else to say today.
All right. Well, thank you, Nina, for being my paranormal partner in crime. And thanks to all our viewers out there who watched us live and who are watching, basically on replay. On our page, The Conscious Mind. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please come back next week for another paranormal podcast right here on The Conscious Mind. We're thinking about everybody in Florida tonight, and I hope everything is okay. Have a great night, and we will see you next week. Good night, everybody.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Fear is defined as a feeling of agitation caused by the presence or imminence of danger.
Congratulations, you are still alive.
Why do you think people believe in ghosts?